Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for February 2022. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive life coach, and a co-host of these chats. And I am here today with Lacy Frazer, my co-host, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life coach and consciousness educator today. I want to welcome all of our listeners joining us today. Our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation is to increase self-awareness, personal empowerment, conscious communication, transformation, and freedom in people worldwide through our Good Vibes broadcasting and consciousness teachings. We believe that these conversations are the education and that they serve to support daily personal evolution and expansion within the incredible rising heroes and heroic souls who seek change, transformation, and more meaning in their lives. If you are inspired by our Good Vibes broadcast and want to pay it forward, we invite you to make a donation through our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can also support our mission and our broadcast by visiting our shop on bonfire.com and purchasing apparel. We hope some of our listeners are visiting the website and enjoying some of the new changes there. You will also see new blog articles written by amazing messengers of the changes and the heroes' journeys of our time. Their insights are there to, in a sense, walk with you and provide insights and affirmations for your journey. And lastly, I want to thank our amazing donors who support us, our vision, and our mission so we can continue to grow and create shows and new podcasts and new inspirations for a world that is truly hungry for change. So thank you to our donors and supporters for your generous donations and giving. We really appreciate your support. And so welcome, everyone, and welcome to you, Lacy.
Hello. I can't even believe that it is almost March 1st, 2022.
Right. I know. February feels a little like a blink.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Just like poof, it's almost gone, but not yet. And we are here for this Fireside Chats today, Lacy, to talk about, of course, the rising hero's journey and specifically the road back, right? It's stage 10 in Joseph Campbell's identified stages of the hero's journey. And I know you have a lot to share with us today, so I'm excited to see where we're going to travel. We travel in the hero's journey, even in these podcasts.
Oh, 100%. People don't realize that they really don't have to go anywhere.
You don't. Exactly.
You travel within your own consciousness, within the universe, within the self. Once you start to engage a lot of this work.
Exactly. Right.
So we are here to talk about stage 10, the road back. And in past podcasts, I spent some time summarizing the previous stages, but I think we're now far enough along that I'm not going to do that anymore because it would take up the entire time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what I would love to do, Marie, is I'd actually, for the first time in a long time, I wrote a blog article for Whole Soul School and Foundation in the last few weeks. And I wrote that blog article on the road back, right? And I thought, because not everybody accesses that and has probably read that, I'm not going to read the whole blog article, but I wanted to read kind of a couple paragraphs to kind of launch us into a conversation about this particular phase.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Have you ever spent a few hours climbing to the top of a mountain? Initially, the mountaintop seems so far in the distance. However, its pinnacle serves as the motivation for the journey. With every step, you learn the terrain and how to negotiate the path en route to the destination, which is at the top of the mountain. Your anticipatory excitement grows while your physical energy wanes as you get closer to the treasured outcome. You finally reach the top. Your body relaxes, you sit down to rest, and you take in the view. You feel exhilarated, accomplished, and exhausted, all at the same time. And then, at some point during this pause, right, at the top, it hits you. While the psyche was under the impression the journey to the top was the only journey to be had, right? Because that's what your focus was on the whole time.
Right.
It is only 50% of the trek. And you realize that there is a road back. You realize you have to go back down, right?
Right.
So feel the energy of that. You know, it's really, if I use the mountaintop as the metaphor, everything we have talked about with respect to the rising hero within the journey of our life, the journey up until this point has been about getting to the top of that mountain. Right? We've learned the terrain. We've gone through tests. We've made allies. We've made enemies. We've learned a lot of skills. We've learned a lot of wisdom, and we make it to the top of that mountain. We get there, and that's the reward. You know, when you're at the top of a mountain and you're looking at the expanse of nature, you're seeing to the horizon. You might be seeing a sunrise or a sunset. You know, whatever it is, you're seeing for miles and miles and miles, and the beauty captivates you. And the beauty seems like enough in that moment. And you are feeling the changes in your body. You're feeling the exhaustion. You're feeling the sense of accomplishment from walking through. It might be you might have walked through a forest. You might have walked through rocky terrain, but you made it. You made it to the top, and that is the reward, which is the reward is the stage we just covered, right?
Yeah.
And now we take all that in, but we also realize we've got to go down the other side of the mountain, right? So during the phase of the ordeal, 2 phases ago, you know, we may have learned about life and death, literally or metaphorically. We survived using the skills we learned thus far on the journey, and we are then able to reap the reward on the other side of the ordeal, which really in this story is the mountaintop.
Right.
But for many, the reward is the realization that we have the power to create our lives through the belief in infinite possibilities. However, achieving or acquiring the reward is in no way the end of the road. We may have reached the mountaintop and we feel triumphant in doing so, but we have to remember that it's not where we're going to stay the rest of our life, right?
Right.
So a true hero recognizes that the wisdom, the teachings, and the skills that have led to personal transformation are not kept just for the self, but are meant to be shared. So the transformed hero is ready to take the road back, down the mountain, back to the ordinary world where they will share what they have learned to help and guide others. Right? So let me just finish this one couple sentences, and then I want to launch into a full conversation about this. The road back may be relatively easy, or it may consist of even more challenges, greater than previous ones, right? Mm-hmm. But regardless, the hero now sees the challenges as opportunities to grow and to learn more. And the proverbial mountaintop in the distance is a desire to help others in the form of serving the community or humanity in some way, using the newly found treasures within.
There's a lot of powerful insights and awareness and energy in that, in what you wrote. Really captures that kind of culmination at that point of coming out of the ordeal, and in that process of gleaning the reward and breathing in, and we may have talked about it, looking out at the vista of the view, right? And allowing yourself that still point to just take a breath after all that you've been through and feel that sense of, wow, I made it through that. And looking over some of the extraordinary feats and things that you did, either conquer inside yourself, vanquish it with another person or being or thing, and to be at that place and know what you've just been through. It's a pretty powerful place for those that have experienced it and those who have yet to experience. It is a feeling of awe. A little bit at the top of the mountain, there's a feeling of awe.
Well, that's the reward, is the feeling of awe.
It is the reward, right? There's something that there's no words for it, because it's an energetic experience that you are having. when you've been through such an ordeal and all the other things that you had to go through to even to get to the point where you're sitting right there. And then to realize that you're not 100% there, wherever there is. There's another 50% or a whole other part of this journey still to go. And I wanted to say two things. The first is, I love the word journey because journey implies movement. When I hear the word journey, I'm thinking things are in motion.
Right.
Right? And in our lives, in our conditioning in this world, right, we are all raised, once we start heading off to school, we call it here in the States kindergarten, right? When you start to go to your first grades, you start to learn that you do this thing and then you get to this stage and you stop and it's static, right? And then you take a few more steps. It's very linear.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
It's very linear, and there's less movement in a linear world, right? When you're step by step and you have to connect very tight dots, there's less movement. And what I want to say is something happens when you're at the summit of that mountain. Something's happening where it's not over. And even in the awe that you're experiencing, it's not a static moment. It's, again, the energy is still moving. Your path is still moving. The call to finish the journey is still summoning. There's a whole lot of energy blowing through. If there's a wind up there on the mountain or a slight breeze, there is movement that accompanies you in every step of the journey. And if we're not moving, that's when some of us experience sometimes stuckness, trapped, tethered, attached, something of that nature. But this hero that's grown to this point, that has been evolved by their own experiences, right? There is a mentor in the journey, but you've become your own mentor. You had to become that. You had to call that out in the journey. And you're marveling at what you've already grown through. And yet, I don't know if it's trepidation, if there's a word, there's also an awareness, I gotta go back. Or this isn't the end point, right? There's more to this journey, and that's part of what we're talking about today.
And it's not only a journey that is in any kind of linear fashion like you were talking about, but there is, and part of the movement, I'm trying to kind of get at the energy of the unfoldment. Mm-hmm. So you're walking up this mountain and you've done all this work so far in the journey. You're at the top, you're pausing, but even when you're pausing, you bring up this movement, and the movement is inside of the self. Because let's remember, what are we talking about? We're talking about the hero rising, rising within us. Rising is movement.
Always.
So that rising is moving up and through us. Right?
At all times.
At all times. So that is why, my language is that we are always in the unfoldment of life. Life is always unfolding. The hero is always rising. And it's only a matter of whether we see it or not. We recognize it. We touch it. We know it. We allow it. We learn from it. Right? So when we're on that mountaintop and we're now facing the road back, we are still in movement. We are in process. But the alchemy that has occurred up until this point within us is pivotal to what that road back is going to look like. Exactly. What that road back is going to feel like.
Right. And that's where we're at this crest of another series of awarenesses and decisions and commitments. Like, are we going, so you will want to talk about this, but really, are we going back changed, forever changed and expanded? You're never going back to what you were when you were in the ordinary world before you accepted any call to this adventure. We're not talking about going back to shrink way back down and fit into that old life. One of the choices facing the hero at this point is, do I go back changed as I am and ever evolving and go back to that ordinary world different than I was when I left? Do I go back to that and bring my change with me? Right?
And help change others as a result.
And help change others as a result.
Right.
Or another option is, do I go an entirely different path? Right?
Exactly. So now you're at an option is your so here it is what you just said. You're at the top. You've taken your pause. It's your still point. The process has happened. You grab the reward of the wisdom that got you to that point, that helped you journey on that specific path from the ordinary world to the special world, right? And now here's the question. Do I go back to the ordinary world on the path that I took to get up to the top of the mountain? Same path, changed person. Same path, changed person back to the ordinary world.
Right.
Or I notice there's another path on the other side of the mountain.
Right.
Where does that go?
Right.
I'm giving myself chills.
I know, a deeper unknown.
A deeper
Stepping
unknown.
deeper into the journey in just a different way.
Right.
And there's a choice point. This
Right.
is a big choice point for the hero.
And neither is right or wrong. They're just different. They're just different paths. So in the movies, there are different. There's many ways this is shown and illustrated, and we're not going to get into too many examples. But it's kind of like Luke Skywalker. Once he had defeated Darth Vader, or I'm not sure the sequence of events, but once he has claimed his reward, and he is a changed man. He actually does not go back to Tatooine, the planet where he was from.
No.
Right? He goes on all new adventures to eliminate the Death Star and,
Right.
Et cetera. So I think there's a lot of different examples where people take the path out of the special world back to the ordinary world, but a changed person, and affects that ordinary world very differently.
And I like to just give one or two, small examples. But Dorothy, we've referenced Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She doesn't go on a brand new path. Right? Not in that story.
Right.
She returns back to Kansas and the farm and Auntie M.
Right.
And but she's changed. She's
Right.
forever changed and expanded, but she does return to the farm and bring that change with her.
Right.
That's a good example of that. And Bilbo Baggins
Right.
in the Hobbit books and films. He goes on this grand adventure where there's a million things going on when he's, going to, and he finds the ring and all of those things, right? But when he returns, he does return to the ordinary world. He returns to his little hobbit home in the Shire, a changed man, a changed being.
Right.
Right? And is embodying who he is inside himself differently.
Right.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
This might be a whole other podcast, but I will plant the seed now. It is interesting that in these stories, we hear so much in the rising action, right? We know all about the call to adventure being summoned, the mentor that shows up, the allies and tests and enemies and the ordeals, right? There's a lot of rising action in these stories, but it's a lesser known discussion in the form of films of that journey back. They don't spend a whole lot of time on that journey after the crest at the mountain. They tend to have a sequel to the movie. So they skip over what happened to them.
Right. Like Bilbo Baggins just appears back in the Shire.
Right. And it took him the whole other several movies to get where he was going. But then, boop, he's back at 5 minutes at the end of the movie.
Right.
But for our purposes here at Whole Soul School and Foundation and our Good Vibes broadcasts, we want to really spotlight this because this is another significant portion of the hero's journey, at least in this one story arc, right? At least on this layer of the journey.
Right. Right. I'm certainly reminded of our own story in some ways, and I think we've talked about this a bit, but a great example is us and the house that we live in. I know we've talked about that a lot, but I'll just say, we went on a major quote unquote hero's journey.
As an example, Bilbo would be a good example. All the energy, if anybody's read those books or seen that story, where he faces all kinds of things and creatures and beings and ogres and battles, right? And he literally travels there. We faced a lot of those demons and dragons and darkness and questions and doubt and all those things that you face in a hero's journey.
And never had to leave our house.
It would be as if all that he faced, Bilbo Baggins, as a character, he did it all from his hobbit home.
Right.
That's what I'm asking people to imagine. Sometimes this happens to people who have an illness and they're in a bed, or they're in a hospital bed. They're journeying all that they're journeying inside, and it looks like they may not be moving very much. But so much movement can occur, and that is what the hero's journey is about. Whatever your circumstances are, wherever you might be, it can be a very physically arduous journey where you're climbing mountains and you're battling dragons or a foe or something, and sword fights and all of that. It can be that you're right where you are, but all the battles are inside.
Right. Well, and that's really what all this is about. I mean, that's why you and I are doing what we're doing. That's why we're talking about this, because ultimately, no matter what we face out in our physical world, the journey is within. So, and that's what I really want people to feel, is that it's always about the inner journey. It may look like it's about the outer journey. It may look like all the people that are doing us wrong, or whether it's the diagnosis, or the financial ruin, or the job that's not working out, or whatever. It looks like it's all outside of me.
Right.
But the truth is the deeper experience is inside, right? And it's so powerful. And so I just bring up our journey. We did all of that and never left our house,
Right.
And I think there's the other story that comes up for me a lot in the similar vein is It's a Wonderful Life with George Bailey, who all he wanted to do was get out of Bedford Falls and experience adventures, right? And he had situation after situation that kept him there. And while he was there, he started to really feel his own torment and the regrets and all the things in his life, right? And then he contemplates suicide, and he is shown what life would have been like had he completed that. And that's so powerful. So he never left Bedford Falls. His whole adventure was in Bedford Falls, and really ultimately inside of himself, in the town, right? He never had to leave to have the greatest adventure of his life.
And these characters are us.
Correct.
Right? We are the George Baileys. We are the Dorothys. We are all of these characters. It's why we pay money to go to the movies. It's why we choose to engage with those kinds of experiences. And what are they called? Motion pictures. Right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Right? It's the telling of the story of the characters, and we're ultimately going and having those experiences because it's somehow speaking to a part of us. We identify with the us that's in those stories that needs those messages in some way. And the more conscious you can be about it, the more you can consciously choose motion pictures or films or documentaries to support your moving character that's in its own journey, that's in its own story, to start to become the creator of your life versus a script that you're following that somebody else wrote.
So you just said something that I think is really kind of the linchpin of the actual road back phase that we may not see as much in movies, right?
Yes.
You brought up like Dorothy pops back to Kansas with her wisdom, and Bilbo Baggins pops back into the Shire, in a matter of 5 minutes, as opposed to 7 hours of filming, his adventures up until that point. And I think that the road back, I loved how you just said consciousness, making conscious choices. So now we've reaped the reward of making it to the mountaintop, and we have the choice: do I go back on the same path but a changed person, or do I go back, or do I take a different path into new lands, into new adventures? And either way, we're bringing our changed self. And part of that road back, and part of that changed self that I think is really powerful, is the consciousness that we now have. Because as we were walking before, we really didn't take in the view in the same way. We weren't aware necessarily of the rocks in the path and the present moment awareness as we were journeying. All we could see was the top of the mountain.
And we were wrestling whatever battles
Right.
in that process, external or internal ones, which was very, I kind of want to say, all-consuming
Yes.
of our energy and our attention.
Yes.
We weren't paying attention and integrating deeper parts of ourselves that were simultaneously occurring. But on the road back, not only could there be more ordeals, there could be more things to face, but there's also still the road back involves an integration process. You're integrating deeper, more of what you learned. You are walking with a greater strength. You're embodying more of what the hero looks like. Like, say you're somebody who's, 6 feet tall. You didn't physically grow a couple more inches in the journey, but your spirit did. So you're walking differently. When there's uncertainty in the whole journey up. You don't know if you're going to make it.
Right.
You haven't even gotten to the reward, but the summit. So there's a whole lot of question marks and how is this going to go? And am I going to walk out of this? Am I going to be okay? You're kind of consumed with all the aspects of that powerful energy in the rising action of the journey. The road home, yes, there can be more challenges to face, and there could even be more ordeals in there. But there's also a time of allowing yourself to witness yourself, see your changes, stand taller, allow yourself to embody and be this person who has lived these changes, who is now acknowledging these changes inside yourself, that you are a changed person. And there's an awareness that you are either choosing a different path entirely with your changed self, or how are you bringing all of you that has now expanded and grown back to that other world. And I think that's a big part of the conscious choosing, because I think that's really significant to talk about. And maybe it will be more podcasts. We'll talk about it, because it's not a once and done. You don't just 5 minutes back in the Shire. It is more of a journey that needs more conversation, I think, about the process of who am I now?
Yes. And what I was feeling as you were talking was the person who is traveling to the mountaintop, the person who is in those first 9 phases, right, is seeing challenges, is consumed by what they're very strategic. They're consumed by how they're going to face their challenges, right? They're going to, they're moving differently, and they're learning from it to some degree, and they're becoming changed by it, but they're also consumed by it. So it's a hard energy to describe, but here's my point, that when they have acknowledged the reward at the top of the mountain, when they are heading on the road back, now they will face challenges. We always will face challenges. But the changed version, the rising hero, sees challenges now as opportunities.
Right, and adventures. So it's the lens that they're looking through has shifted, has changed. Their perspective has changed. So now they see challenges as opportunities to grow and learn and evolve and use the skills that they've learned. Right? They understand that the power, their power as a hero was in them the whole time, and now they get to be that. It's so true. And this is a big point. It came through me when you were speaking, but that on the road up, there's this sense of external foes that we're fighting all these things outside of us. But on the road back down, right, on the road back, all those challenges that will still be in your path that are new ones, showing up in your experiences. It's an opportunity to see an internal mentor rise into action or rise into a deeper place inside you. So on the road up, what I want to say is those challenges are external foes. Oftentimes, that's how we perceive them. And on the way back, not the same challenges because they will be different, but similar energies to the challenges. But this time now, they are seen as opportunities, and in a much bigger perspective, not just opportunities, but those opportunities are your new mentors to grow even deeper or broader or bigger or change in another way, right? So it's and these are lenses of perception.
Yeah, I've probably mentioned this in past podcasts, but I talk a lot in the classes that I teach about, this broader perspective of most of us in the early part of our life, from up until, I'm not going to put an age on it, but before we've reached kind of the mountaintop, if I use that metaphor, we're living life from the outside in, right? We're living, and which is what you're talking about. We are living in reaction to the external, world. So we see everything as external to the self, and we see everything as something to battle or fight or wrestle with or struggle with or suffer with, right? Mm. But once we are changed, oftentimes we realize that we now have the power to live life from the inside out. Mm. And now we begin to understand that we are the creator of our reality, that we really do have the power to respond to the opportunities that are in the external world from an inner place.
And when you are allowing that in your awareness and it's evolving inside you, that you're starting to experientially know that that is in fact true, right? That you are responding from this inner place inside you. I can't remember the quote exactly from Wayne Dyer, but it's akin to when you start to see through different lenses of perception, the world around you changes. Do you know that?
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
There it is. I couldn't call
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. We've thanked Wayne a lot in our podcasts over the years because he's so brilliant in how he has called out these metaphors, but these teachings, these illustrations. And in this alchemization process, when the hero has, arduously journeyed up the mountain, rested at the top of the mountain in the reward, gleaning all of the marrow of what they've just been through and in the awe of it. And they're just starting to turn back for the road back and knowing that there's choice points to be made of how they're going to take that journey to the next level. Are they going back, right, to the ordinary world? Or are they going someplace else? What's amazing is as that transformation happens from looking at the outer so much and reacting to the outer so much to having this inner compass, this inner guidance system, this inner strength, this inner mentor. As those challenges are starting to form, because that's how life is, right? Challenges are in the world. But as you change the way you look at things, I think the things you attract change.
Absolutely.
Not just the things you see change.
Right, because your energetic frequency changes because you're looking at things differently.
So all the things that may be ahead of you in this next leg of the journey can also be shifting because you are still shifting. And it's to the degree of which we can expand our perceptions is the degree to which we either continue to have challenges because we have a belief in challenges and we keep summoning in challenges and we say, I've just been through this whole thing, 10 layers of this journey. I'm exhausted. I got nothing left. I'm almost out of my food rations, right? How come this is still happening? The hero doesn't fully think that way at this stage, but you could summon in a whole new level of ordeals just from the way you're perceiving this road back.
Yes.
The hero that's really evolving and integrating what they've been learning about, because that's really the name of the game.
Yeah.
You're on the road back, but you're not just walking with your feet, right?
Right.
You're actually taking time as you walk to reflect. You're still allowing integration. You're still growing. You're asking your spirit, your soul, your guides, the universe, whatever your language is, to support you in the journey, to help you become the best version of you that you are destined to be and become. If you're doing that very consciously as a creator of the road back, that road back for you looks very different than an earlier version of you would. And certainly than other people's versions on the road back, because lots of people have different kinds of roads back.
Right.
Right? A lot of people, that's how it can look different. I had a friend who gave me this example of tar. Some people look like they're trying to move in their lives through tar, which is very thick and sticky and heavy, right, and gummy. Or whether you're moving and you've done a lot of this work and you are evolving and it melts. It's like you're just like moving through it like butter, right? The more times have gone around these story arcs with ourselves, right? Maybe the first time around that story arc for us, we were still finding our way because we didn't have this language and we didn't know it all works out in the end perfectly. That was not our language in the beginning.
Right.
But when you come around it and you start to keep coming around those curves and you do live and you do survive and you do transcend things and you do grow, and things that you thought were going to destroy you did not destroy you. In fact, broke you open to a whole new level of living inside yourself. That's when you go on another story arc and more challenges of all kinds of things show up in your experience. But now you have the confidence in yourself to face those and meet those with different perceptions and welcome when your perceptions are shifting versus fear that. But it takes a whole time around this first story arc to even begin to see that. So we still have a hero that has not arrived back in the ordinary world, changed, and figured out how to live that yet. Or they still haven't, where we are in the conversation, they haven't made the choice of which path to choose. Are they going to be like Luke Skywalker and go a myriad of different paths because his home doesn't exist anymore? There is no ordinary world to return to. Literally what they showed in that movie, right? Or are you going to be like Dorothy, who maybe wasn't appreciating or whatever in her life in the first place? Then she goes and has all these adventures. She expands and grows and knows that she's always home. She's always her spirit. She's always her gifts wherever she is, right?
Right.
And does she go back and learn to live with Annie M., who did not have her experience,
right?
Who is still looking, Dorothy, and didn't even know that she was missing, right? Because in the movie, Dorothy has this whole adventure, and I don't think Annie M. knew that she was gone because it looks like it was like a dream, right?
Right.
So Annie M. didn't journey with her and Toto to Oz. So Dorothy has to come back to that ordinary world, maybe like George Bailey. I don't know that movie as well as you do. But where he's changed and Dorothy's changed, but no one else around you has changed.
Well, this is like 10 podcasts worth.
I know.
Just that thought alone. Because
can you believe that they haven't covered this in the movies?
Right.
Like they skipped this step. It's fascinating.
Well, and I think why it's so relevant, it's just so relevant for all of us because this concept that we go on our own journey, we have this whole experience. And what if we go on this massive adventure, this call to adventure? We change, we transform, we're journeying. And then, like you're saying, we come back to the ordinary world. And that could be our family. That could be the workplace. That could be, our marriage. And what if the other people there have not done the same journey and have not done or recognized their own journey, so they have not changed, but you have?
Right.
How
do you bridge
then?
the worlds, right? How do you bridge those worlds? It's a big question.
It is. I remember working with men in prison for so many years, and many of the men I worked with in the last 8 years of my career had massive transformations, personal transformations. Talk about hero's journey. My God, just tremendous journeying, and their inner hero rose and rose and rose over their time and work with me in prison. And then now they're returning back to their home, back to their wives or their children or their, that environment that was not, and it's the same environment that they left, but they have completely changed. And many talk about the interesting challenges with going back into that world after they had changed so much.
Well, and that they had in many ways, I don't know if they would all use this language, but there could be the perception that they had the luxury of time to devote to this work, to heal, to integrate, to grow, to learn. And meanwhile, family members outside of that experience who were not having this kind of very powerful journey that they were on, right, but are kind of looking at this person and could even be resentful of that this person shows up totally different. Like, you have the gall to come back this way.
Yes.
You'd think the hero sometimes would always be embraced, but that's why there can be other ordeals still in the journey.
Correct.
Right, still in the journey.
Correct.
And some did. Some went to family members who could meet them in those changes, welcomed those changes, wanted their own healing of what had happened in their lives and the disruption that the prison sentence must have caused and all of that. But they are willing to go into the growing work and do something to also try and keep pace with the shifts that have happened with their spouse, right? But in many cases, also the other option, the other road that is there for some people is that they've changed and their family has not changed. And in fact, they're still resentful of their departure in the first place. So there can be quite a big energetic disparity between the heroes. So in our movies, we tend to revere our heroes, and they go and pull the sword from the stone or whatever. And somehow in the story, everybody is like praising them and celebrating them, might have a big feast, right? And there's this beautiful reconnection and reunion. But sometimes in the hero's journey, depending on your life lessons, there can be other chapters still to work through. And this is a very real, I've definitely lived this, where I was going through big changes in our story. And there were many people in my life who could not meet me there. And a lot of people fell away, whether it was conversations that clearly caused some kind of tension or conflict because I wasn't behaving the same way. I wasn't speaking the same way. I wasn't living the same way. And you can see in people's eyes, like, you are not the Marie that I knew. And that isn't the way they talk to you like that or perceive you that way. That's not a good thing.
Right.
I don't like the changes that I'm seeing.
Well, they feel threatened, I think, a lot of times.
It can happen. So let's go back to the hero who doesn't, it's the first time around the hero's story arc. They haven't lived this yet, so they don't have that kind of experience under their belt. They're still in the unknown. They don't know what the road back entails. But they know because that inner mentor is growing. That inner mentor is letting them know. So we have the path that we can retrace. We can go back that same path, but differently because you are a changed person and we will meet that differently. And I'm inviting you to welcome that, meeting that differently. And you will return to the ordinary world. And part of the next level of your growth will be bringing your gifts to share, but also dealing with the vibrational or the energetic differences between what people expect you to be, what they knew you to be, and what you've become, and it's not well received. There is this awareness of that's a whole journey right there.
Well, and that's
another
ordeal too.
That's another ordeal. It's another level.
I mean, you could be having to make different choices with respect to your family.
Do I stay in this marriage? Do I live in the same house? Do I go back to the same line of work I was in? All your men face those questions, right? Who left prison. They had to deal with those things.
Right.
And it's very real for people.
Right.
And then there's it seems almost more fun and adventurous, right? But it could also, it depends on someone's life lessons. Do I leave the whole path and the ordinary world that I once knew? And do I go to meet a whole other life that's waiting for me that I know nothing about? That can be a whole other ordeal because for some people, leaving any sense of the familiarity is so foreign to them. They've grown, but it might be a fear in the sense that maybe the new
unknown.
Fear is that when I took this journey, I thought I knew I'd return. But if I'm thinking about not returning to something I've known, I'm going to go to a whole other country with a whole other language, different food, different customs, whole different life. That could be terrifying or challenging to some people. So it's just interesting when you have this reflection. It is, if somebody has a memory of a film clip, I'd love if a movie shows that road back or a book that shows that story back, because we need more of these stories. We know all about the challenges to get to the summit, and that's fabulous. but they're still living as the new version of you. That's what is that's the other 50%. That's a big part of this hero's journey that is like integrating. And as you are claiming this for yourself and allowing this inside yourself, you're knowing that some people may be rejecting that. Right? Some people may in your life be rejecting that. They might not be able to interact with or accept or incorporate this new version of who you've become that you know is more real than the other version of you was.
Right.
But it's it's a process. It's a process. And
it is. And the changed person, the our hero, the rising hero within, the new me, the new version of me, now has a lot more skills and deeper wisdom to face and manage and deal with that life that I may not want to live anymore. And that, how am I going to, if people are rejecting of me or are not meeting me where I am, right? That's okay, because as the new rising hero within, I'm somebody who can flow in my life. I can move better. I'm more flexible in my thought process. I can allow myself to have the emotion and release it, right? You feel their
acceptance of me or rejection of me doesn't define who I am anymore. And that's that external world. You've left, but you still have to practice it, because when you are on the journey up, if we're using directions of up and down the mountain, right? On the journey up, you weren't having to think about that and deal with that. But on the journey back, you are having to integrate that you are the center of your compass. I'm not talking about selfishness or self-centeredness. It really is like
it's a GPS.
It's a GPS.
You have an inner GPS that is now guiding you.
And before, the GPS that you used was your parents'
external
perception of you, your children's, your bosses, your coworkers, anybody who in your life who used to give you all kinds of feedback about who you are based on the roles that you played out with them.
Yes.
But when your self-perception was broken down and built up again in that journey, and that's part of the standing tall in the road back and learning how to stand tall as that rising hero, not boastfully. I'm trying to distinguish in the energy. It's not an ego. The ego is not in this. The true hero, the true rising hero has at some level, that ego has been vanquished in some way, or levels of it. And you are returning more humble. You are returning more integrated. You're returning more aware of yourself and the illusions of life and the powerful gifts that come in life when you persevere through challenges. And you could have people that... I know this experience. I've had this again. We've talked about people in our own life, and I've had this experience where I've traveled this extraordinary worlds upon worlds upon worlds with myself. And then you talk to somebody about, who knows, here's an example, buying a beach house, right? Because we did after this, right? And for a time, we did that. And there can be people saying, you've just been through this ordeal. You're now going to go get yourself saddled with another financial obligation. There's all kinds of ways that people can judge this expanded version of you because of their own, trapped belief systems and those things. And it doesn't always happen this way, but it's important, I think, in these conversations, that it's not always that the hero returns to a feast and a grand celebration and is well received and loved, and everybody's thinking, you're amazing, right? Sometimes, even in that person's journey, maybe the first story arc, they're well received. But the next story arc, they need to stand for justice. They need to stand for something that's counter culture. They need to stand for something that people around them now, this time, they're not so comfortable. They don't like those changes this time. Right. And you see that heroes are revered and then they're dethroned. Right? Yeah. And the rising hero doesn't do it to be that kind of celebrated hero or judged hero. They do it because this is their right path. This is the growth their soul, their self, their higher self needs and craves for the lessons of this lifetime. And we're saying all this because we're talking a little bit ahead of the road back, but I'm forecasting still what's on the horizon. That hero on the road back is at the crest, having the awe, experiencing the reward. Wow, I've really made it through some big stuff. And they are aware it's no small decision. Do I return? Changing on the way back because I've still got things to face. I don't know who I will be when I try and go back and I actually arrive back in my original ordinary world. Or do I take another road, right? Is another path calling me? And it's not one path. There's probably hundreds of paths. It's a big choice point at the crest of that mountain for the road back. Where do my feet, what direction do I go? East, south, west, north?
Right. And if you in the change that has occurred, I believe that you are now tuned in at this point more to your inner GPS, and it's the inner GPS that is going to instruct the feet.
It's not the ego.
No.
Right?
Right?
No, these are more energetic decisions. These are more
intuitive.
soulful and intuitive, and just higher guidance is coming through.
So as we kind of round out, I want to just mention, it's just so interesting where this conversation went. We never really know where it's going to go, but
right.
I just, as the universe would have it, I am reading a book at the moment that a client gave me, and I will say that I don't know that I've read a book cover to cover in like 10 years, right? Like a paper book, like a book that has pages that you turn, right? I mean, we just don't do that anymore.
Right.
It's kind of like a record player with music. But anyway, I am reading this book. I'm actually just started it for a second time, and it's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, Haig. And it's got a flavor of It's a Wonderful Life with George Bailey, but it is absolutely the hero's journey story. And it's about a woman who is, kind of desperate. She opens up and is really unhappy and depressed and considering taking her own life.
Wow.
And she ends up basically in a library between life and death. And in that, the library is full of books that are the stories of all the different possible lives she could have led had she made different choices along the way.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm not going to in any way tell you how this book kind of ends, but I will say that it is really about everything we're talking about. It's this inner journey that she goes on through all of these experiences and exploring all of these possibilities. And she has a road back, and it's just awesome. Like I'm crazy about
read
it
too,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe our listeners will be intrigued. It's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig.
Yeah. So I had to bring that into the conversation because, again, it's hard to talk about it without kind of giving it away, some of the things away, and I don't want to do that. But the energy of this book and the energy of what we're talking about here and the hero's journey in general, the energy of the classes that I teach, the energy of the things that I'm working on with current clients, I mean, it's all so incredibly connected. And the reason it's connected is because we are all these spiritual beings having human experiences, and it's the human experience that is allowing us to tap into our own hero, right? And it's why you and I are talking about this.
Right.
Good stuff.
It is good stuff. No, it's very good stuff. And it's important, like you said, hadn't read a book cover to cover or even several pages consecutively in a long time in our world because it's so busy and we're so distracted and distractible. These are things that we don't always reach for, but it is a reminder, I think, for those in the hero's journey. Again, we're talking about the hero at the crest of the mountain making these choice points, like making these choices with that inner GPS. And there's this awareness, Lacy, that we're not just walking back without tools. Part of the inner GPS might be we're not sure which direction we're going. And sometimes when you don't know where your feet should be going, it's a still point.
Right.
It's not that energy's not moving in the still point, but you might be setting up camp for that night so you can listen deeper. And maybe you're going to pull a book out of your backpack, and inside that book is going to be just the message you needed, for the compass is guiding you always for the next step. And when you mention this, I'm sure it's going to be a message for some of our listeners, and it's a message for me. And that's what we're also paying attention to, what is coming into our experience when we're unsure of what the next step is, or we're unclear, or we're being challenged in some way. Something's coming. Mm-hmm. Something is coming to bring to you the next tool or resource or support that you need to show you the next kind of the compass, the energetic compass of the direction that you're being summoned in.
And I would just like to kind of end my piece around the fact that, I don't know about anybody else, and I'm going to use this metaphor. If I was walking up the mountain, if I was taking a hike and I was seeing my destination at the top of that mountain in front of me, I'm not paying attention to the mile markers. But I tell you what, when you become a conscious observer and you become a conscious hero, right? That's it. The conscious hero, right? When you become your own conscious hero, the road back is so different because you are paying attention to everything. You're so much more aware. You're so much more appreciative. You're so much more tuned in to your own intuition. You're so much more connected to the universe.
And the oneness of everything and the awareness that everything interconnects with everything else.
Yes.
You're not thinking. Like if somebody's hearing this with their ego mind and saying, how does that happen? The ego mind doesn't have the capacity to live as we're talking about with the conscious hero. I love that. That's exactly, it is the conscious hero. We may have to use more of that language as we go forward, but it is powerful. And it is this journey also from like a kind of separation and aloneness that many people feel in a crowded world into this place of higher guidance where everything interconnects, everything has its place, everything is a perfect part of the greater whole. And there's so many aspects of this journey, which is why we devote the Fireside Chats to spotlighting aspects of the journey, because there's so many different ways that we experience it, and yet the themes and the threads that connect it all are the same, right? It's so powerful. And I would just wanted to close with a quote from Joseph Campbell, which many people might have heard before, but we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And that is another big part of this hero's journey and even the road back. It's more committing to letting go of the life that was planned or known and saying yes to the life that is waiting for us, that incorporates and allows and embraces the changes that we are going through.
Beautiful.
Right? Yep. So, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you, Lacy, for joining me in this Fireside Chats podcast today. I want to thank our listeners for joining us, and I invite you to visit our website because there's a lot of things that either don't show back up in podcasts. We're continuing to grow. We've been resetting an anchor in the foundation this last year with some of the changes on the website. We've got lots of visions. We have many voices that are starting to emerge to want to be part of the things that we're doing. And you can enjoy our Fireside Chats, but you can enjoy many of our podcast categories and messengers, and there will only continue to be more of them. And we do have some writers for the foundation. There's a lot of social media posts that are inspiring. So if you're looking for a little inspiration to fortify you in the journey, we are here for that. That is the mission and purpose and vision of Whole Soul School and Foundation. So find us on the web at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org, and find us on your favorite social media platforms, including if you listen by audio podcast. It's a great way to listen to us if you're in the car, doing dishes, out for a run. We are in motion when you are in motion. So come find us and we'll talk to you soon. Blessings, everyone.